Remember when I said that last year was the last year I'd be doing something like this? Well, guess who was wrong? Me. What is going on, guys? I am back on a new channel. This is now the what is this, guys? The third channel I think I have done OOTP on over the past several years. And if the name sounds familiar, if the voice sounds familiar, then it probably is. This is Ryan. I hope all of you are doing well. I'm sure I will see at least a couple of familiar names in the comment section. If you have been around Out of the Park Baseball for a while, you will know that I am a big fan of this game, and I uploaded it pretty regularly when I was in community college. And as soon as I went from community college to an actual four-year university, I wasn't really able to do it anymore. Just between living arrangements the first year and just kind of wanting to enjoy my time, my free time for the most part, with all the cool people that I met. I wasn't really able to do this the final 2 years of college, and I tried last year. I said, listen, I don't know what the future is going to hold, but I'm going to try to do this one more time, and I think we got one, maybe two episodes in, and that was that. I just never got around to it again. But I am excited to be doing this again. And the reason I know I will have time to do it this time is because I am not exactly out of a job, but I'm kind of close. So I actually, fun fact, if you want to skip the life story introduction part, just go ahead, maybe like a minute or two, and then we'll get into it. But I actually got a job working with the Trenton Thunder, the AA affiliate. I'm sure a lot of you, if you're watching this video, you probably know the AA affiliate of the Yankees. And my first day was actually a week ago today, or yesterday, a week ago yesterday, March 9th. And so naturally, I said it on Twitter. It seems like I picked a very subpar time to start working for a baseball team, because now we closed our offices yesterday. And basically, I am kind of limited in when I am able to work from home because I am an assistant. I just got hired, and a bunch of financial reasons, obviously, which it's completely understandable. I can't imagine they're going to be making a ton of money when they're not playing games. So I figure with all my free time, I might as well go back to doing this, because I had a lot of fun doing this. Of course, a lot of you were there when I first started with the Angels back in, I guess that was, what would that have been? OOTP 16, 17? It was, I think it was 17. I started with the Angels, tried to get Trout a ring, and we were not able to do that. And then the next year, we chose the Marlins for an even bigger challenge. No farm system, horrible owner, more talent then than they obviously have had the past couple of years, and still weren't able to win a title. So in the YouTube series that I've done with this franchise, I have never won a World Series. Despite my best efforts and despite all of your suggestions, it has never quite come to fruition. But we are here to try again, and I have my team in mind. I spent a lot of time trying to decide who I wanted to choose, and I came up with a team that kind of surprised myself, but I think it'll be a fun way to come back into YouTube and into creating content for this game. You might wonder why I'm using yet another new channel. Of course, some of you were there with me when my YouTube channel handle was It's Waldo, and then I changed it to my name, and then I got another YouTube channel that was just my name for the URL reasons, and now I'm doing yet another channel. I just would kind of like to keep all my gaming kind of stuff on this channel, and all my, I don't want to say professional because that sounds kind of boring, but all that kind of stuff. That sounds less professional than I wanted it to be, but I want all that to be over on the other channel. But we are here. It is OOTP 21, which is one of the best days of the year when Out of the Park Baseball drops. I pre-ordered it, which is why I'm playing, and that's why if you look at the bottom there, you'll see that this is the beta build. The full build of the game does not come out until the 20th, which is Friday. And so I want to say right now, I'm not going to get too much into this game. I want to just show the team that I'm going to pick. I want to go over the roster. I'll show you the settings that I think I'm going to go with. They're not set in stone yet. I might change them, but for right now, I think I found the settings that I am going to go with. And I'll walk you through step by step these settings and why I decided to use the ones that I did. And then I am going to wait for a few days because obviously with any new game, even this one, as good as it is, there's going to be some bugs, typos, different things that need to be fixed. So I'm going to wait until the official build of the game comes out to actually start my actual save for this YouTube series, and then we will finally be able to get going. So Friday, I think, should be the day when we actually get to start, making transactions, starting the simulations, and going from there. But I'm going to go into a new standard game. By the way, I don't know if there's going to be any people watching this that have never played OOTP, or maybe they haven't played in a few years. So if you have any questions about the game, if you want to see, I don't know, maybe some type of tutorials or something like that, let me know. I can definitely get around to that because, as I alluded to, I have a lot of free time on my hands now. Ooh, yay. So we're going to start a new standard game. We're not going to do challenge mode. I don't like to do... I won't say I don't like to do it. I do partake in it from time to time, but for something like this, I kind of like to just keep it off in case I need to change any settings, or for whatever reason I need to go into commissioner mode for whatever reason. Not to cheat, but if there's anything that's just way too off and I need to fix it immediately, I'll do that. So the leagues that I'll be using, it really hasn't changed a whole lot. I tend to use the same ones. I like to use the U.S. Independent Leagues, the Mexican League, the Cuban League, the League in Japan, the KBO, the Australian League, that one as well. I don't do the World Cup of Baseball. I'm just not a big fan of it in this game. But I will say, if this is your first experience with OOTP, you don't have to do everything that I'm doing. You can do all these leagues if you really wanted to. You could only do Major League Baseball if you wanted to. It's up to you. Part of it is also going to be determined by the computer that you have. If you have a big, beefy machine with a good CPU and everything else, you can probably afford to get away with almost every, if not every league. But if your computer is kind of on the older side, you can still play this game. Don't get me wrong, but maybe don't select all of these. How many options? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Maybe don't select all 16 of these options if you have a very old computer. Maybe only select 1 or 2. But it's up to you. So we're just going to call this, this is not going to be the actual one, but we'll just call it YouTube for right now. And start the game. And now we're going to load the teams and the players. This should not take too awfully long. And also let me know how the recording settings look, or how the recording looks, how the audio sounds. I went and dug through and found my Blue Snowball microphone and my microphone arm and my pop filter, because I tried using the microphone on my headset, my Razer headset, and without a pop filter, it did not sound very good. I knew I would have been annoyed if it sounded, if I was watching a video and it sounded the way that it did. So just know that for all of you guys, I went through, I sweat, I got dirty, I dug under my bed, took about 10 seconds and found all this microphone stuff, and I hooked it up. That way the audio would sound a little better. But let me know definitely how the recording looks. I found a video on YouTube about 2020 OBS settings because I have not used this in a while, admittedly. And so hopefully this all turns out pretty well. Hopefully it looks pretty good. But this is taking a little longer than I thought, so just give me 1 second and I will come back when we are ready to select our team. All right, so we are ready. I apologize. I was just reading that the Eagles will not bring back Malcolm Jenkins, which is weird. I don't know how I feel about that, but anyway, this is my name. That's my birthday. This is already all filled in because I did a test save earlier. I'm running around with that for probably a couple seasons just to see if anything needs to be fixed or anything. But I will be doing GM and manager. It's just what I've always done. It's how I like to play the game. That's how I have fun. So I'm not going to check off cannot be fired. I don't think I've ever been fired doing one of these YouTube series, but I could be wrong. So the team that I'm going to choose, and I thought, as I said, I thought about this a lot. I initially wanted to do the Rockies because they're kind of an interesting case. They have kind of a not the worst farm system in the league, but they have like a lower tier one, and you have the big decision obviously with Nolan Arenado. You can trade him immediately, a disgruntled star. You can trade him, try to get some more assets into that farm system just right off the bat. But I figured that was going to kind of be a popular one to do, so I didn't do that. I was going to do the Orioles, but they're kind of, I'm not going to say they're far along in the rebuild, but they're getting a lot of pieces. So I think a year or two ago, that might have been a good place. But, I mean, they still do have the Chris Davis contract that you have to kind of finagle your way around. But I decided that I wasn't going to do that one either. There were a couple other teams that I bounced around. I thought about doing my team, thought about doing the Phillies. I tried to do that last year after we got Harper, and we all know how that went. I was not able to do that series. I did 1 or 2 episodes. I thought about doing the Giants because Gabe Kapler went there, and they have a lot of intriguing pieces, but they their farm system's on the rise, so I didn't really want to pick them just because I do kind of like to have the challenge of rebuilding a farm system. Maybe not to the extent that I had to do during the Marlins and the Angels when I did those series, but I kind of like a little bit of a challenge in that and trying to just infuse a lot of youth into the system. I thought about doing the Reds. They do have one of my favorite players in baseball, Trevor Bauer, and they do have, they have traded away some of their young pieces, but ultimately I ended up going with the Boston Red Sox, which I never thought I would choose. But I think that this team is in a really unique position, obviously, and we're just going to start the game. Obviously, they won the World Series in 2018. I understand. They won the World Series in 2018, but now their farm system has kind of gone down the wayside in recent years, which is, that was going to happen. Sorry if the screen just went black there. I apologize. Still getting used to OBS again, but it's kind of gone a little downhill. A lot of their young talents either graduated or they've traded it or they've fallen off. Now, when you look at their farm system rankings, I just went with the first 3 that I could find easily and readily. MLB.com has them at 25th. Keith Law of The Athletic has them at 25th as well, and then Bleacher Report has them at 28th. Which is definitely a far away. This was a team that for a while had a pretty beefy farm system, but now for a number of reasons, it's not that beefy anymore. So I thought that, especially right after the trade they've made in the offseason, sending Mookie Betts and David Price to the Dodgers, I thought that it would be fun to do this team, obviously, because the roster, you obviously still do have talent, at least in the lineup. I suppose the pitching rotation is a little rough, and as is the bullpen. But I thought it would be fun to do this, and obviously in a tough division too, the Rays are pretty good every year. The Yankees, obviously, they seem to have a lot of young talent, so I imagine in this save, at least, they should be a juggernaut for years to come. Orioles, as I mentioned, they do have young pieces. They are kind of getting out of that rebuild, at least they should be soon, so they might be a problem in a couple of years. And then you have the Blue Jays, who I like the moves that they're making as well. They also have young talent, obviously headlined by Vlad Guerrero Jr., so it's going to be a tough division. I'm not going to say it's going to be a tough. It's obviously not the toughest team I could take over, right? Because if you go into front office, you see that we're in a very big market. Boston's obviously one of the bigger markets. We have the 3rd highest budget. We have the 4th highest player payroll in the league. So we do have a lot of positives when we take over a team like the Red Sox. It's not like I'm taking over a team like the Marlins, who really don't have a large budget, a lot of money to spend. And of course, the owner was an issue there. But you see, this team brings in a ton of attendance every year, close to, if not over 3 million, pretty regularly. You see 2013 was kind of an off year, 2.8 million, but most of the time they're right at that 3 million mark, close to 3.1 million people coming into Fenway Park every year. So it's definitely not the hardest team from that aspect. It's not like I have to, pinch pennies and go through the margins and try to find these undervalued players because, quite honestly, I don't really have to do that with a team like this. But you take a look at some of the salaries. Chris Sale is obviously becoming a major question mark. Martinez could opt out after this year, but if not, he'll have $19 million the next 2 years. Xander Bogaerts just signed his contract extension, so he's going to be with the team for a while at $20 million. So if he falls off for whatever reason, which I wouldn't expect him to, but if he does, it's going to be a problem. But we're going to get into that in a second. But I do want to start by going through the settings. I think that would be a good thing to do. So go into game settings here. And I like to use, first of all, I keep this all fine. If you need to pause the video at any point just to read what I'm doing, go ahead. And by the way, I'm going to tell you what I do, but one of the cool things about Out of the Park Baseball for many years is just the immense amount of customization that you can do in this game, from the top all the way to the bottom. You can customize almost anything to your heart's content. So do whatever you're comfortable, do whatever you like. That's how you're going to enjoy the game a lot more. Me personally, we'll start here with the player rating scales. I like to use 20 to 80. That's because that's what they use when you talk about scouting in real life. When people fill out scouting reports, it goes from 20 to 80, where 20 is very, very bad, and 80 is elite, and then everything else kind of falls there in the middle, normally in increments of 5. I do like to kind of keep the stars instead of values 20 to 80. It's just something that I'm personally comfortable with. I do turn off owner goals. I don't really like those at all. I think that some of them are very flawed even now. This was a system that they introduced, I guess, 2 or 3 years ago maybe. And it's just, I'm not a big fan of them. Sometimes they ask you to do things that in real life an owner would not ask you to do, and then they get really upset if you don't do it. Like they ask you to re-sign, a bench player to a long-term extension, even if he's like 35 or 36, and then when you kind of just let him go, they get really ticked about that. So I don't like the owner goals. I'm going to turn them off, but as I said, feel free to keep them on. I used to mess around with these autosave and lock settings, but my PC, it's not the beefiest, but it can handle a lot, so I usually just keep all of these undone. But if you, for whatever reason, you have some performance issues, or you don't have like a ton of memory on your hard drive, SSD, whatever, you can kind of change some of these. Maybe you only want to save box scores from just your human organizations or stuff like that, or only keep the 3D movements from, human organizations. That way it's just your teams and not everybody else's. I'm glad to see that this is the top prospect list. It updates annually. You can do annually or dynamic. I like to choose annually. It's just a personal preference, and you're going to hear me say that a lot. A lot of this is just personal preference. Years of playing the game, it's stuff that I'm comfortable with, stuff that I kind of like, but I'm going to say it again. It might be different for you. Your mileage may vary. So we're going to go into players and face gen. The injury frequency, I'm going to put high, and we'll see if I need to lower it down to normal. But I want to see what high is like. I think it kind of encourages you to build a lot of depth in your minor league system. That way, in case one of your guys gets injured, you can just call up another one that should be able to kind of fill that gap. Now, if it gets too much, we can always lower it down to normal, which is what they say, it's OOTP Classic. But I want to see what this realistic modern day setting is, because I normally don't use that a lot, but we'll see what it's like. The development settings I like to change as well. I like to change the aging speeds for both batters and pitchers, not to 450, absolutely not, but to 750. I think this is something that I've been doing for a while now. I think ever since my first YouTube series, and it seems to work out pretty well. So, and then I have started increasing the dev speed. I like to go 1.250. That way some of these guys maybe get called up a little younger than they normally would. And then I like to just change the talent randomness to 110. Nothing too big, but it does kind of increase it a little bit. I like to heavily utilize face gen, so I like to use it for all players, only on demand though. And then I also like to have all coaches, scouts, and managers with a coach picture. I disable baseball cards, so those of you that have played the game for a while know that once you get to the All-Star break, especially, it takes a very long time for every single all-star, and there's 34 for each team. So it takes a very long time for all 68 players to get a baseball card generated for them at the all-star break. And I just, I'm not as big a fan of that anyway in this game. I know back in the day, I don't know if it's still a thing, but I know back in the day you get like mods and you get the cards to look certain ways. I don't know. I was just never a fan of that. I do keep all these three at the top checked, but once again, your mileage may vary, and this is also something that kind of depends on your computer. This does take up a little bit of, it could take a little bit of time if you have kind of an older machine for some of these pictures to load up and generate. So, maybe if you have an older machine, maybe don't do all players, or maybe don't do any of the players. So that's just something you'll have to kind of tinker with and see how much stress it's putting on your computer. Trading difficulty, this is always a big thing, not just in Out of the Park Baseball, but in every single game. People think it's very easy to fleece the AI. OOTP actually does a pretty good job of that if you change the settings. I would definitely recommend never staying at average. I like to go to very hard and heavily favored prospects. I think that's fair. At least that's what I've done in the past. Now, I have had a lot of situations where it's almost near impossible to do a trade with these settings on, so I might just start at hard and heavily favored prospects, and if I think it's a little too easy to still get guys that I want, I'll go to very hard. But I think hard and heavily favored prospects, I think we're going to start there. Then the ratings rate, people are kind of split on this. I personally like to do 40 and 30 and 20 and 10. So it's basically, as you can see, player evaluation AI settings. It's how the AI evaluates the players in your universe. So I kind of like 40% of that evaluation to be based off what their current ratings are on the scouting scale. I like 30% of that to be how they're doing that year. So you figure 70% is based on what their ratings are and how they're currently doing that year. Another 20% is based on how they did last year, and only 10% is based on how they did 2 years ago. So normally I would click apply changes now, but since this is not the file that I will be using for the actual save, I'm not going to click that, but I would normally click apply changes now, and then that kind of reevaluates the players. So there's nothing in Almanac that I need to worry about, or online league or database. League settings, it's always good to come in here too. This is all fine. All the team names are fine. You won't have to worry about those. Going into rules, you see they have all the new rules. So minimum batters faced is 3. Active roster size 26. The expanded roster size is no longer 40. It is now 28. And so all those are right there. And over here, I do like to allow the trading of injured players. It's just a personal preference. I don't turn on draft pick trading. I'm just not a fan of it in this game, but I do have these top 2 checked. The 10-5 rule will automatically be checked by default, and I do like to allow trading of injured players. I don't like to have trading of recently drafted players, so this 1 year is the default. I think that's good. AI trading frequency, if you think the AI are trading too much, you can lower it. It starts at average if you don't think they're trading enough, which I don't think that'll be a problem. It typically never has been, but I think average is a good place for that to start. Then I like to change the draft number of rounds, so it's normally 40 rounds, and then I like to generate players for 41 rounds. And then these percentages, it's how much of the draft pool will be that type of player. So 40% of the draft pool will be high schoolers, 20% of the draft pool will be junior college players, and then the other 40% will be just regular college players. And that is, I think, everything I need here. Yeah, okay. So financials, I don't think there's anything I really need to touch here. You can change. As I said, there's a lot of stuff you can change. I mean, you can change, meaty contract baselines. You can change if the owner controls the budget, or if the revenue is just all available and the owner doesn't factor into it at all, which is kind of cool if you think about it. You can change the salary baselines for different types of players. So, a good quality player, you could say, no, I don't want you getting $11 million. I only want those kinds of players getting $5 million if you really wanted to. You can just change so much. You can change the ticket price baseline, the baseline for the amount of people that walk into a stadium per game. There's just so much that you can do, all the way down to like the very minute details, which is just why this game is so incredible. I would love it if they somehow were able to put this all into MLB The Show. That would probably be the best sports game ever made. Now, in the just general options menu, a lot of people don't like automatic evolution. I'm fine with it. I think it kind of adds a lot, especially if you're doing a YouTube series. I think if you're doing a personal save, maybe you don't want it to mess up your league and the save you have going on, but I'm going to keep it on for this. There are two things you always want to change when you start in terms of realism. So you'll see that the offense award, it should be the silver slugger award. So not sluffer, slugger. And then the defensive award obviously should be not the great glove, but the gold glove. So you should always change those just for realism purposes, from the platinum stick award to the silver slugger, and from the great glove award to the gold glove. Now, I don't think there's anything I need to change on this side, and there is not. Over here, there is something I normally like to change, and it has to do with the All-Star game. I like to make the popularity, I go from high to moderate that way. It still does play a factor, but it does open up the possibility for players who maybe aren't as popular but are having very good years to get in. And I also don't like having all teams represented. I just don't think that's necessary. I don't think it's necessary in real life. I understand why they do it, but for me personally, as a Phillies fan, for most of the previous decade, from all those years they were bad, it really did not make me want to watch the All-Star game when one of our relief pitchers made it into the All-Star game. I really didn't care. So I turned that off. But if you want every team to have an All-Star at the All-Star game, you keep that on. You go for it. Playoff settings are fine. I believe these are actually new settings, the prospects game and the home run challenge. I believe those are new things that they've added into the game this year. So now they have a prospects game that you can choose to hold or not. And by default, these are what they are set as. I'm going to keep them on. I'm interested to see how those work. Going into players, you can choose it's more for a lot of the stuff I might do is kind of in this area right here at the bottom left of this fictional player setting. You can choose how many international amateur free agents get created every year, so you can have 15 a year. The default is 30. If you wanted more, if you wanted 60, if you wanted 120, you could do that. You could change the signing cap if you wanted to, from $5 million to whatever you wanted to do. You could change when the free agents get revealed if you wanted to do that. And I think that is almost everything I need to do. So you'll see that this is, you can kind of change how other teams, as well as your team, if you don't really pay attention, how they kind of operate. So you'll see that, like, for example, in general strategic tendencies, now the hook for the starting pitcher, it's kind of changed over the years. So when I first played OOTP, I forget what it was, but I know it was not -5 for very quick. So you can kind of see how the game has changed over the year. One thing I do change is use of openers. Right now it has a 2 at rarely. I kind of like to bump that up to 4. I think that is a good spot for that, and I think we're going to just keep seeing openers more and more as the years go on. And you see also how the game has evolved. Hit and run, rarely. Bunting, rarely teams do that. Stealing bases, you can almost say, depending on your manager, that would be rarely or even very rarely too. And for this defensive substitutions, once again, it would kind of depend on your manager, but it seems like we see that pretty often nowadays. Pitcher stamina, very low. You could change that. So if it seems like your pitchers aren't lasting long enough, maybe you upgrade that to low or normal. But that's all stuff that you can experiment with. There's so much to do in this game. It's really, really hard to get bored with it. But that is the settings that I use, and this recording has been going on for a little bit, so I am just going to quickly go through well, you know what? No, I'm going to wait until we actually start the save. So I was going to go over the prospects and the roster, but I figured, this my recording says it's been going on for about 32 minutes, so this video is already kind of long, so we'll save that for Friday. That'll be something fun to start Friday's video with, going over the roster, going over possible things that we can do, and then looking at the prospects. And I'll show you guys, stuff about shortlisting if you don't know that, and preventing the AI from messing up your prospects. So that'll be a fun way to start off Friday. So I guess that'll do it for my first episode back on YouTube. This is fun. I am excited to be back. I know I've said this a lot. If you've been around me a lot, I tend to say that I'm going to do a certain amount of videos a week, and then I never do that. So not going to say anything like that this time. I'm just going to upload when I can. As I said, I do have a lot of free time because as someone that works in sports, it's not a great time for that right now, clearly. So I want to thank you all for watching. Definitely, I really don't like saying stuff like this, but if you do want to see more Out of the Park Baseball, if you want to see not only this series, but if you'd like to see tutorials, if you'd like to see anything, you want me to answer your questions about the game, just let me know and subscribe. That way you won't miss a video. And like it if you like the video. Definitely leave some comments. Those that have been around the channel, or not this channel, but that have been around me for a while know that I do like interacting with people down in the comment section below. So definitely, if you have any questions, comments, concerns, compliments, criticisms, anything at all, just leave it down below and I will be happy to discuss them with you. I will see you guys in the next video. As I said, hopefully I can do it Friday. I should be able to do it Friday. So the next video of this series will be out sometime on Friday, March 20th, when the full game gets released. So I want to once again thank you all for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.